Community members in Uvalde, Texas, are expressing outrage and frustration over the release of surveillance video from that deadly shooting at Robb Elementary School. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano is in Uvalde with the latest reaction. Lilia, I understand you spoke with a former FBI agent about this footage that's been released.
That's right, John, and what she told me is a lot more than what I expected. You know, I thought she would say some mistakes were made. She talked about the lack of leadership, but she says this is one of the most egregious, if not the most egregious, rather, police response that she has ever witnessed. What families suspected, that this was a widespread failure by every single one of the officers who were in that hallway, is the case. The images you're about to see, I have to stress, are very difficult. They're very hard to not just watch, but hear. But I'll say this, the families in the community here tell me it's important for them to watch through so that everybody can get to see what officers did, but more importantly, what they did not do. Those are the frantic cries of a teacher at Robb Elementary who called 911 as the shooter approached the school, already firing into classrooms from the parking lot. Then, at 11:33 a.m., he's seen walking through the hallway carrying an assault weapon. He stops at rooms 111 and 112 and starts firing. At least 11 officers arrived within 3 minutes. Some approached the classroom. They were shot at and retreated. That's when the waiting began. Catherine Schweit launched the FBI's active shooter program.
The leadership failure occurred in the opening moments when officers approached the door and then didn't follow through because they were the leaders at that moment. Those first officers should have continued on.
Nearly 20 minutes later, dozens of officers from 7 law enforcement agencies gather in the hallway, armed with rifles, ballistic shields. Not one approached the classroom doors. At 12:03, a student calls 911 from inside the classroom. Then, at 12:16, she calls again, saying 8 to 9 students were still alive. Then, at 12:21, 4 more shots are fired. Officers approached and still didn't go in for another half hour. Schweit says she has never seen a more egregious police response.
Basic law enforcement 101 is that you go to the threat. They decided not to go to the threat, even though we can hear in the tape shooting underway. It's heartbreaking.
Maggie Mireles Thomas lost her sister, teacher Eva Mireles, whose husband was one of the school district police officers on the scene. She says the blame should not be on law enforcement alone.
You know, it hurts to have to relive this. A school shooting will happen again because unless these laws change and people are able to obtain these type of weapons at as young as 18 or 21 years old, this is still going to happen.
And Lilia joins me now with more. Lilia, it's so hard to watch that footage. So I'm having to take a moment here, but Texas lawmakers had planned to privately release this video to the families and then also talk to them about the details of a preliminary report. That obviously all got messed up by the release. But is that still going to go forward, that meeting?
That meeting is definitely going to go forward from what we know. In fact, we heard from one of the Texas lawmakers who was not heard, but we saw a tweet today from one of the Texas lawmakers who was part of the investigation into the shooting and who worked on this report that's going to come out. Today, he was tweeting about how context matters, and he precisely used the example of the Mireles family. He said, you know, you can't look at what he was stressing is the fact that people are looking at these video and making assumptions without the context of the full report. That report is important to release not just to the families, but to the public. And the example he was using was about the husband of Eva Mireles. He says that there's been a photo that's been spread where people have criticized an image of one of the police officers looking at his phone. Well, we know from the investigation and from what Director of DPS have said, Steve McCraw, and from these lawmakers, and especially today, that this police officer whose wife died in the shooting, he was one of the 6 officers from the school district police who responded to the shooting, and apparently he was escorted out. He had gone in to let officers know that his wife was in there, that she was calling him from inside the room. So this still image that people have been sharing saying, look, officers are just looking at their phone, may have been this officer just making sure that he kept communication with his wife. I asked his sister-in-law, and she says, I believe that is him. And if that's the case, I'm certain he was just trying to keep communication with her. I just want to play a little bit more of what Maggie Mireles, the sister of Eva Mireles, and the sister-in-law of this police officer told me about him.
My brother-in-law that has to see this, you know, I know he tried his best, and, you know, I just, it tears me apart to know that what could have been.
Very powerful, Lilia. Thank you very much for being there for us with that report.
Thank you, John.